It started on a Tuesday afternoon, normal day. I was in the middle of reviewing Q3 projections when my phone buzzed with the notification, group chat message. I glanced at it absently, expecting it to be the usual work banter. Someone complaining about the coffee machine, maybe a lunch order discussion. Instead, I saw a group chat called Office Concerns that I definitely didn't remember joining. Michelle had just posted asking if everyone agreed this needs to happen soon. Derek responded that the sooner the better, it was affecting everyone's morale. Jen said she felt bad because he was going to be blindsided. I stared at my phone, confused. Who was getting blindsided? What needed to happen soon? Then Marcus posted asking why I was in this chat. Michelle immediately started freaking out in all caps. Derek said, "Oh fuck." Jen just typed Michelle's name. Then Michelle apologized and said she was adding people and must have clicked my name by accident. My stomach dropped, my hands started shaking. They were talking about me, about firing me, and I'd been accidentally added to the conversation. Marcus told everyone to stop typing and said if I was reading this, we needed to talk. He sent another message asking me to come to his office. I wanted to type something back, wanted to ask what the hell was going on, but my fingers wouldn't move. I just sat there staring at my phone, watching as 3 dots appeared and disappeared as people started typing and then deleted their messages. Marcus Chen was my direct supervisor. We'd worked together for 4 years. He'd mentored me when I first joined the company, had given me my last 2 promotions, had been at my wedding. I thought we were friends, real friends, not just work friends. I stood up from my desk, my legs feeling like jelly. The walk to Marcus's office felt like a mile, even though it was maybe 30 feet. I could feel eyes on me. Everyone in the open office space knew something was happening. They always did. Office drama spreads faster than any official communication. His door was open, but I knocked anyway. He looked up and his face was pale. Guilty. He told me to come in and close the door. I did. Sat down in the chair across from his desk, the same chair where we'd had dozens of casual conversations, where he'd told me about his daughter's first day of school, where I'd confessed I was nervous about buying a house. He started to speak, then stopped, ran his hand through his hair, and just said, "Fuck." This wasn't how this was supposed to happen, he told me. I asked him how what was supposed to happen. My voice came out steadier than I felt. He said they'd been having discussions about team structure, about performance, about areas of concern regarding my work. There was no good way to say it. The leadership team had been evaluating everyone's contributions and they'd identified issues with mine. I repeated the words back to him like they were in a foreign language. My performance. He confirmed. It. There had been issues, missed deadlines, quality concerns, communication problems. It had been building for a while and they'd been discussing how to address it. I asked if firing me was how they addressed it. Not by talking to me about these supposed issues, not by giving me a chance to improve. He shifted uncomfortably and said it was more complicated than that. I told him to uncomplicate it then. Because from where I was sitting, my supervisor and my colleagues had been having secret meetings about getting rid of me, and I only found out because someone fucked up and added me to the wrong group chat. He started to say my name, but I interrupted him. I wanted to know how long. How long had they been planning this? He didn't answer immediately, and that told me everything I needed to know. I asked again. How long, Marcus? About 2 months, he said quietly. They started having concerns around the end of Q2. 2 months, 8 weeks of coming into work every day, thinking everything was fine, while behind my back, people were building a case against me. I asked what these performance issues were exactly, because my last review was excellent. He'd given me a raise 6 months ago. He said things had changed since then. The Caldwell project had issues. I reminded him that the Caldwell project was a success. We delivered ahead of schedule. He claimed there were problems in the process. My communication with the client was inconsistent, and Derek had to step in multiple times to smooth things over. Derek. Of course. Derek fucking Patterson, who'd been gunning for a senior position since he joined the company 18 months ago. The same Derek who was in that group chat, probably celebrating my impending departure. I told Marcus that Derek stepped in because he inserted himself into everything. I had the client relationship under control until Derek started undermining me with them directly. Marcus said that's not how Derek tells it. I asked what else. What other performance issues was I supposedly guilty of? Marcus pulled out a folder, an actual physical folder, which meant this was documented. Official, they'd been building a case. He mentioned the Martinez proposal. I'd missed the deadline by 2 days. I explained that was because Michelle didn't get me the financial projections until the day before it was due, and they were full of errors I had to correct. He brought up the Stanford presentation. I didn't include the competitive analysis section. I told him that was because Jen specifically said in our prep meeting that she was handling that section. She told me she'd add it to the deck herself. For every example Marcus gave me, I had an explanation, a context, a reason. But I could see it didn't matter. They'd already decided. They'd made up their minds, and now they were just going through the motions. Marcus said he could see I was upset, and I cut him off. Upset? I asked him if he thought I was upset. He was supposed to be my friend. Or, at least I thought he was, and he'd been secretly planning to fire me for 2 months without ever once talking to me about these supposed problems. Yeah, I was a little fucking upset. He apologized. He said he really was sorry, but this was a business decision. I asked when. When were they planning to do it? End of the week, he told me. They were going to have a meeting on Friday, 3 days. I had 3 days left before they were going to blindside me. Except now I knew, now I had the advantage of information, even if I had no idea what to do with it. I told him I needed to think. I needed to process this. He started to say he thought it would be better if we continued talking, but I cut him off. No. I was going back to my desk. I was going to finish my work for today. And then I was going to figure out what the hell I was going to do. I walked out of his office before he could respond. The main office area was silent. That awful, oppressive silence that meant everyone had been listening. Or at least everyone knew something had happened. I went back to my desk, opened my laptop, and pretended to work. But really, I was opening that group chat again, scrolling up to see if there were any messages I'd missed. There was one message, sent right after I'd been added. Michelle saying she was adding everyone to discuss the Ryan situation and they needed to be aligned on messaging and timeline. The Ryan situation. That's what I was. A situation to be managed. I scrolled up further and that's when I realized this wasn't a new group chat. I'd been added to an existing conversation. There were hundreds of messages above the point where I'd entered, months of conversation. With shaking hands, I started reading from the beginning. The first message was from 3 months ago. Derek asking if they could talk about me because he was getting really frustrated with how I was handling the Caldwell account. Jen asked what was going on. Derek said I wasn't communicating with the client properly, and they'd called him directly yesterday asking for updates because they hadn't heard from me in a week. That was a complete lie. I'd sent the client a detailed update email 6 days before that message. I still had it in my sent folder. Michelle chimed in saying she'd noticed some issues too. I seemed distracted lately, missing details on reports. Marcus at least defended me initially. He said not to pile on, that I'd been solid for years and maybe I was just going through something. But Derek persisted. He said he wasn't piling on, he was raising legitimate concerns. If I was going through something, maybe they should address it. Jen asked if anyone had talked to me directly. Derek claimed he tried, but I got defensive. Another lie. Derek had never said anything to me about any concerns, not once. The messages continued. Derek bringing up small mistakes, reframing normal work situations as evidence of poor performance. Michelle agreeing, adding her own observations. Jen occasionally pushing back but ultimately going along with the group consensus. And Marcus. Marcus slowly being worn down. His defenses of me getting weaker and weaker until finally he admitted he was starting to see what Derek was talking about. The Stanford presentation was definitely below my usual standard, he said. Derek thanked him and said he wasn't trying to throw me under the bus, just trying to protect the team. Michelle asked what they should do. Derek suggested they needed to start documenting everything. Build a case. If this continued, they might need to consider whether I was the right fit for this role. That message was from 6 weeks ago. 6 weeks of them watching me, documenting my every move. interpreting everything I did in the worst possible light. I kept reading, watched as Derek systematically built a narrative of incompetence around me, watched as he volunteered to help with my projects, then reported to the group that I'd needed his help because I couldn't handle it myself, watched as he twisted every interaction, every email, every meeting into evidence that I was failing, and the others just went along with it. Michelle, who I'd helped train when she first joined the company, Jen, who I'd covered for when she needed to leave early for her kids' school events, Marcus, who I'd considered a genuine friend. There was one message that made my blood run cold. Derek saying he'd been talking to Sarah in HR, and if they documented this properly, they could make a case for termination without having to do a formal PIP. Saves everyone time and awkwardness, he wrote. Marcus said not to get ahead of themselves. Derek said he wasn't, he was being pragmatic. If they were all in agreement that this wasn't working, they should handle it cleanly and move on. Michelle said she hated that it had come to this, but she agreed the team dynamic would be better once this was resolved. Jen said it felt harsh, but yeah, she didn't see how this got better. They'd all agreed, all of them, that I should be fired, that the team would be better without me. My phone buzzed, new message in the group chat. Marcus saying everyone should give me space today and they'd regroup tomorrow to discuss next steps. Derek agreed, saying this was unfortunate, but they needed to stay professional. Professional? Right. Nothing says professional like secretly plotting to fire someone for months. I looked around the office. Derek was at his desk, typing away, looking perfectly calm. Michelle was on a call, laughing at something. Jen was in the break room making coffee. Marcus was still in his office, probably strategizing with HR. They all looked so normal. Like it was just another Tuesday, but for me, everything had changed. The office I'd walked into this morning, comfortable, familiar, safe, was now hostile territory. Every conversation I'd had in the past 3 months suddenly took on a different meaning. Every smile had been fake. Every compliment had been hollow. I opened my laptop and started going through my files. Projects I'd worked on, emails I'd sent, documentation of my actual work, not Derek's twisted version of it. I started copying everything to my personal drive. If they were going to fire me, I wasn't going to make it easy. I wasn't going to go quietly. My phone buzzed again, but this time it wasn't the group chat. It was a text from my wife, Amy. She was asking how my day was going and if we were still on for dinner with the Hendersons tonight. The Hendersons. Marcus and his wife, Sarah. We'd had plans for weeks, a double date, casual and friendly, just like we'd done dozens of times before. I stared at the message for a long time before typing back that something came up at work and asking if we could cancel. Her response was immediate. Everything okay? I told her no, I'd explain when I got home. The rest of the day was surreal. I sat at my desk pretending to work while periodically checking the group chat to see if anyone was saying anything new. They weren't. Marcus had clearly told them to keep quiet, but I could feel them watching me, could feel the tension in the air. At 5 p.m. I packed up my stuff and left. Didn't say goodbye to anyone, just walked out. Amy was waiting when I got home, concern all over her face. She wanted to know what happened. I told her everything. The group chat, the messages, the months of secret meetings. She listened, getting angrier with each detail. She said they couldn't do this, they couldn't just build a case against me based on lies. I told her they could though, that's the thing. It was all legal. They documented their concerns, they had multiple people corroborating the same story, and now they were going to fire me for cause, which meant I probably wouldn't even get severance. She insisted I should fight it. Show them the real emails, the real timeline, prove Derek was lying. I asked with what? My word against 4 of theirs? Including my supervisor. HR wasn't going to side with me, they were going to protect the company. She went quiet for a moment, then asked what I was going to do. I told her honestly that I didn't know. I genuinely didn't know. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying every interaction from the past 3 months. That time Derek offered to help with the Caldwell presentation. Had that been genuine, or was he setting me up to make me look incompetent? That conversation with Michelle about the Martinez deadline, had she deliberately delayed the financial projections to make me miss the deadline? How much of it was real problems and how much was manufactured? By 3 a.m., I'd made a decision. I wasn't going to wait until Friday. I wasn't going to give them the satisfaction of firing me on their timeline, but I also wasn't going to go quietly. The next morning, I came in early. Before anyone else arrived, I printed out every email, every project file, every piece of documentation that contradicted Derek's narrative. I made multiple copies, one set for me, one set for HR, one set for Marcus. Then I went to HR. Sarah Chen, no relation to Marcus, was the HR director. She'd always seemed fair, professional. I was about to find out if that was true. She was surprised to see me at 7:30 a.m. I told her I needed to report workplace harassment and a hostile work environment. Her expression changed, became guarded. She said okay, and we should go to her office. I sat down across from her and laid out everything. The group chat, the screenshots, the documentation showing Derek's lies. I walked her through every example he'd cited as evidence of poor performance and showed her the emails proving the real story. She listened, taking notes, her face carefully neutral. When I finished, she said this was serious. These were serious allegations. I told her they weren't allegations. I had proof. Screenshots of the group chat, emails, everything. She said she'd need to investigate, talk to everyone involved, get their side of the story. I asked what other side there was. I had them in writing discussing how to fire me. She said she understood I was upset, but she needed to follow proper procedure. She'd interview everyone, review the evidence, and then make a recommendation to leadership. I said leadership meaning Marcus, who was part of this. She clarified she meant the executive team, Marcus's supervisors. I asked how long this would take. She said a few days, maybe a week. In the meantime, she thought it would be best if I worked from home, to give everyone some space while she conducted the investigation. I pointed out that she was suspending me. She insisted she wasn't suspending me, just suggesting I work remotely while they sorted this out. I'd be paid, nothing would change officially. It was just to reduce tension in the office. I wanted to argue, wanted to demand they fire Derek instead, fire Marcus, fire everyone who'd been part of this. But I knew how this worked. The person who makes waves is rarely the person who comes out on top. I told her fine, I'd work from home. I gathered my stuff and left. As I was walking out, Derek was walking in. We made eye contact. He had the decency to look uncomfortable. He started to say my name, but I cut him off. Don't, I told him, don't fucking talk to me. The next few days were torture. I worked from home, trying to focus on my projects, while constantly checking my email for updates from HR. Amy tried to be supportive, but I could see the worry on her face. We had a mortgage, we had expenses, I needed this job. Finally, after 5 days, I got a call from Sarah in HR asking if I could come in for a meeting tomorrow at 10 a.m. They'd completed the investigation. I asked what the outcome was. She said we'd discuss it tomorrow and asked me to bring my laptop and any company property I might have at home. My stomach sank. I said, so you're firing me? She said we'd discuss everything tomorrow. That night, I updated my resume, started looking at job postings, tried to figure out how long our savings would last if I couldn't find something quickly. Amy held my hand across the dinner table and told me that whatever happens, we'd figure it out. We always do, but I could hear the fear in her voice, the uncertainty. The next morning, I drove to the office. Sarah met me in the lobby and escorted me to a conference room. Inside were Sarah, Marcus, and someone I didn't recognize, a middle-aged woman in an expensive suit. Sarah introduced her as Patricia Donovan, the VP of Operations and Marcus's supervisor. Patricia extended her hand and I shook it, feeling numb. She told me to please sit down. I did. They all sat across from me, united front. Sarah began by saying they'd completed their investigation. Into my complaints, they interviewed everyone involved, reviewed all the documentation I provided, and examined the group chat messages. I asked what they found. Patricia took over. She said they take allegations of workplace harassment very seriously. After a thorough review, they determined that while the group chat was inappropriate in tone and should have been handled more professionally, the concerns raised about my performance were legitimate. I just stared at her and repeated the word, legitimate. She said yes. While they agreed that the way my colleagues communicated about these concerns was not ideal, the underlying performance issues were real. I had missed deadlines, made errors in client communications, and required additional oversight on several projects. I told her I was being sabotaged. She said they found no evidence of sabotage. What they found was a team trying to address genuine concerns about a colleague's work quality. I said that Derek lied about multiple situations and I'd provided emails proving it. She said I'd provided my interpretation of emails. Others interpret them differently. I looked at Marcus. He was staring at the table, wouldn't meet my eyes. I asked if that was it. They get to plot my firing in a group chat, lie about my performance, and nothing happens to them? Sarah said they'd been counseled about more appropriate communication channels, but they needed to address my performance issues. Patricia opened a folder and told me they were placing me on a performance improvement plan. I'd have 90 days to demonstrate significant improvement in the areas they'd identified. Marcus would meet with me weekly to review my progress. I asked if they weren't firing me. Patricia said not at this time. They believed in giving people opportunities to improve, but she wanted to be clear. If I didn't meet the expectations outlined in this PIP, termination would be the next step. They slid the PIP document across to me. It was 12 pages long, detailed expectations, metrics, review processes. It was designed to be impossible to meet. I'd seen it happen to other people. The PIP was never about improvement. It was about documentation, building a case so when they did fire you, it was justified. I told them I needed to think about this. Patricia said I could take the day to review it, but they needed my signature by tomorrow. I took the document and left. Sat in my car in the parking lot for a long time, just staring at nothing. My phone buzzed. The group chat, they still hadn't removed me. Derek was posting that well, that went better than expected. Michelle said she felt terrible. I looked so defeated. Derek said I'd either improve or I wouldn't, and either way, the problem was solved. Marcus told them to please not discuss this in the chat. Derek apologized and said he was right. They should move on. Moving on. Just like that. My career, my reputation, my livelihood, all just something to move on from. I drove home. Amy took one look at my face and knew. I told her they didn't fire me. They put me on a PIP. She asked if that was good. I explained it was worse. It meant they were going to make me fail, document everything, and then fire me for cause so I couldn't claim unemployment or wrongful termination. She suggested I quit then. Walk away, find something else. I told her if I quit, I get nothing. No severance, no unemployment, and it looks bad to future employers. Why did you leave your last job? Oh, I quit right after being put on a PIP. That's not a good look. She said, so you're trapped. I confirmed that, yeah, I was trapped. We sat there in silence for a long time. Then Amy said something that surprised me. What if I made them fire me for something else? I asked what she meant. She explained that I said the PIP was designed to make me fail. So don't play their game. Document everything. Do my job exactly as specified, and when they try to claim I'm not meeting expectations, I'll have proof that I am. Make them either admit the PIP was bullshit or fire me for some other made-up reason. Either way, I'd have a stronger case for wrongful termination. I looked at my wife, brilliant, pragmatic Amy, and felt a surge of love and gratitude. I told her that was actually not a bad idea. She said she knew, she was smart, and I should listen to her more often. For the first time in days, I smiled, just a little. The next morning, I signed the PIP, but I also did something else. I called an employment attorney. A real one, not just a consultation. I paid the retainer and told them everything. They asked if I had a case for wrongful termination. I said not yet, but I thought I would, and when I did, I wanted to be ready. For the next 90 days, I was a model employee. I documented everything. Every task I completed, every email I sent, every meeting I attended. I showed up early, stayed late, went above and beyond on every project. I was polite, professional, never gave them any reason to claim I was being difficult or uncooperative. And I watched the group chat. They didn't know I could still see it, and they kept talking, kept discussing how I was doing, whether I was going to make it, whether they'd need to find new reasons to justify firing me. Derek posted that I was actually doing pretty well, honestly better than he expected. Michelle asked if maybe this would work out after all. Derek said maybe, but he still didn't think I was the right fit long term. Marcus said they should just see how the 90 days went. But Derek couldn't help himself. Even as I was hitting every metric, meeting every goal, he kept undermining me. Subtle things. taking credit for my ideas in meetings, excluding me from important emails, talking to my clients directly without my knowledge, and I documented all of it. On day 89 of the PIP, Marcus called me into his office for what he said was a heads up before tomorrow's final review. I pointed out that I'd met every goal in the PIP, exceeded most of them. He acknowledged that, said it was commendable. But there were still concerns about my overall fit with the team, my communication style, my collaboration approach. I told him that wasn't in the PIP. The PIP was specific, measurable, and I'd met every metric. He admitted I had, but said a PIP was just one tool. They still had to evaluate my overall performance and cultural fit. I said cultural fit, you mean whether Derek likes working with me? Marcus said that wasn't fair. I asked if it wasn't. Derek had been sabotaging me since day one and Marcus let him. He believed Derek's lies over our 4 years of working together. Marcus sighed and said he was trying to help me. If I came into tomorrow's meeting with this attitude, I asked what would happen. He'd fire me? We both knew he was going to do that anyway. I walked out, went back to my desk, pulled up the group chat one more time, and then I did something I'd been considering for 3 months. I took screenshots of everything. Every message, every lie, every discussion of how to get rid of me. I compiled them into a document along with all my evidence of actually meeting my performance goals. And I sent it to Patricia Donovan, the VP, with a copy to the CEO. Subject line was hostile work environment and wrongful termination in progress. Then I went home. The next morning, I got a call before I even left the house. Patricia asking if I could come in at noon instead of my scheduled 10 a.m. meeting. I asked why. She said they'd received my email and needed time to review the information. I told her to take all the time she needed. I'd be there at noon. When I arrived, the conference room was crowded. Patricia, Sarah from HR, the CEO, and a lawyer I didn't recognize. No Marcus, no Derek, no Michelle or Jen. The lawyer told me to please sit down, and I did. He said they'd reviewed my email and the evidence I provided. They'd also had conversations with the employees involved. This was a complex situation. I told him it really wasn't. They conspired to fire me based on fabricated performance issues. I had them discussing it in writing. I had evidence of every lie Derek told, and I had proof that I met every metric in the PIP. The lawyer and Patricia exchanged looks. Patricia said they were prepared to make me an offer. I told her I was listening. She said 6 months severance, full benefits continuation, a neutral reference, and they'd agree not to contest my unemployment claim. In exchange, I'd sign a comprehensive release and agree not to pursue legal action. I sat back and asked about Derek. She said that was a personnel matter they couldn't discuss. I asked if he was being fired. She repeated they couldn't discuss personnel matters. I said, then no deal. They wanted me to go quietly while the person who orchestrated all of this kept his job? No way. The lawyer started to object, but I cut him off. I told them my attorney would be in touch about my wrongful termination case. I was sure they'd be very interested in how they handled this situation. I stood up to leave. Patricia told me to wait. She asked what it would take for me to accept a settlement. I thought about it, about Derek sitting at his desk, probably right now, thinking he'd won. About Marcus getting away with betraying our friendship. About Michelle and Jen just going along with it all. I laid out my terms. Derek's gone. Letter of recommendation from the CEO. 12 months severance. And they admit in writing that the performance concerns were unfounded. The lawyer said that was a lot. I told him it was a lot less than what a jury would award me if this went to trial. They had screenshots of workplace harassment, documented lies used to justify termination, and a clear pattern of targeting. Any employment attorney would take this case in a heartbeat. They huddled together, whispering. Finally, Patricia turned back to me. She countered with 10 months severance, a letter of recommendation, and they'd agree that personality conflicts led to the separation, but wouldn't admit the performance concerns were unfounded. Derek would be given the option to resign. I pushed back. 12 months, unambiguous letter of recommendation, and Derek's fired, not given the option to resign. More huddling. The lawyer finally agreed. They drew up the paperwork. I read every word, then called my attorney to review it. 3 hours later, I signed. I never went back to that office. They boxed up my stuff and had it delivered. The severance was generous enough that I could take my time finding the right next opportunity. Derek was fired 2 days later. I heard through the grapevine that he tried to fight it, but he couldn't. They had the group chat. They had evidence of his lies. He was gone. Marcus remained, but I heard he was moved to a different department. Demoted, essentially. Michelle and Jen kept their jobs, but apparently it's awkward now. Everyone knows what they did. That was 6 months ago. I've since started at a new company. Better pay, better culture, better people. Or at least, I think they're better people. I'm more careful now, more guarded. I don't trust as easily, but I also learned something important. Sometimes the worst thing that happens to you is also the best thing. Getting accidentally added to that group chat, seeing exactly what people thought of me, how they'd been plotting against me, it hurt. God, it hurt. But it also opened my eyes, showed me who people really were, and gave me the ammunition I needed to fight back. I still have the screenshots, saved on 3 different drives. I doubt I'll ever need them, but they're there. A reminder that people aren't always what they seem, that workplace friendships are fragile things, that you should always document everything. And sometimes, just sometimes, the bad guys don't win. Sometimes they get exactly what they deserve. As for that group chat, it's still active. They never deleted it or removed me. Every few weeks, I get a notification. Usually it's something mundane, office lunch orders, meeting schedules. But sometimes, late at night, I open it up and scroll through those old messages. The ones where they plotted my downfall. The ones where Derek lied and Marcus slowly came around and Michelle and Jen just went along. And I smile, because I won. They tried to destroy me quietly, professionally, legally, and instead, they destroyed themselves.